Hey everybody, it's Ross over at the Daily Jaws. I hope you're well. This week I caught up with Euan Rannachan, a filmmaker and photographer whose world famous Jaws photo took the internet by storm. Euan talks about his work, talks about Jaws, shark conservation, and what we can do as land lovers to change the perception of sharks.
Where are we going?
Swimming!
Some bad hat, Harry.
It's a great white.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
1,100 men went into the water.
You son of a...
What's going on, guys? My name's Euan Rannachan. I'm a full-time photographer and filmmaker. I live in California near Lake Tahoe. I shoot a bunch of different stuff. I'm a corporate photographer for Clorox. I shot everything from their NASCARs to stuff for Burt's Bees and kind of everything in between. I'm also an art director for a winery in Napa called Dakota Shy. But my driving force and pretty much my passion in life, great white sharks. And I run a company called Be a Shark. We take people out to Guadalupe Island to check out these amazing creatures. I've spent hundreds of hours in the water with them now, and I've never felt scared or excited, but for other reasons. You know what I mean?
No, I do, and I think that's kind of how I've felt when I've watched not just Jaws but other creature features, if you like, but probably more Jaws than anything. It made me more fascinated about the creatures rather than fearful. Obviously, you know, depending on which movie you watch, there is going to be a fear factor, I guess, because there's going to be a level of suspense and terror and all that kind of stuff in the movies, and ultimately it's an entertainment. But yeah, I think we're starting to see, because the level of knowledge that's available, I think, through the internet, and also the technology that's available for people to go and record their experiences is so much more available than it was a few decades ago. I think we're really starting to see a shift in the perception of creatures like sharks and stuff. Yeah. Before we dive too deeply into that topic, because we will come back to it, how did you get started in this, in terms of just this journey of being someone who's maybe been inspired by shark documentaries, Jaws, whatever it happens to be, and you've suddenly found yourself, you know, the owner of a shark cage diving company and a shark photographer, a world-renowned shark photographer? I mean, how does that happen?
The photography, the photography thing is what got me interested in it. I had actually seen close to 10 years ago now. So from the start, when I was small, it wasn't just sharks. It was really any, like, polar bears. I had a huge fascination with polar bears, or any kind of big kind of apex predator, things that that should be the top of the food chain above us, kind of thing. I've always been just fascinated with, like, the kind of how these animals, sharks or bears or whatever it is, how there's no kind of energy spent in areas that aren't beneficial to it, kind of thing. And sharks they're pretty much the exact same thing. They're, 98% of the time, they're pretty methodical, slow moving, very aerodynamic. And then it's only when, they really, really want something that, you get the big mouth open and they're off to the races, kind of thing, which is incredible to watch, obviously. But that's only a very small fraction of the time of these animals. So I think that as a kid, I always just really, I was always kind of just drawn to that, how well they, they've been doing this for a long time, so they're pretty dang good at it now. So I think I was just really always in awe of that kind of thing. And then obviously seeing things like Jaws and seeing people that close to it, I just never really realized, other than going to South Africa or whatnot, that you could get in the water and get a really good look at them. And it wasn't until close to 10 years ago now, I had seen some amazing black and white photos of white sharks, and more like artsy, not as like National Geographic or scientific kind of representations that you usually see. And I was pretty much blown away by them. And it was a famous, I wish I knew his name. He was a Dutch photographer, and he had a big website, and I was like, this guy seems like a big deal. I'll try and email him, but I doubt that, I'll hear back from him. So I sent him an email just, expressing that I liked his work, and I would love to know where he did this and all this. And like 10 minutes later, I got an email back and it was like, this is the boat. This is the captain. This is where you need to go. This is what you need to, and it was Guadalupe Island. And the boat was the Solmar V, which is a really famous fish. It's a dive boat. And I now have it tattooed on my arm just because I feel it's, home away from home. And it was also with this guy named Dean Carr, who I call him Granddad Shark now. Godfather Shark. He's a really famous music video producer in LA. Pretty much anything you saw in the 90s, the dude either photographed or created the video for, from Dave Matthews Band to Tool to Red Method to the list goes on and on. So incredibly nice dude. Was doing the same thing pretty much we do now, where was getting charters together on the Solmar and taking people out to see the sharks. So I couldn't at that time. We were just buying our first house and, there's a lot of barriers, but I just kind of kept up with the dude. And eventually, I eventually was able to get some money together and the timing was right. And I made it out to the island. And then it was one of those things, I think, when you go there and you do this, it's one of two reactions. You either check it off the list or it's something that you need to do every single year. And I was like, I need to do this multiple times a year kind of thing. And probably obsession is the right word for it. I call it love affair. But it hasn't gone away. And I think people always go like, oh, you need to keep going back and doing it. And it's like, I do, because, first of all, it's never the same twice. Like you never have the same exact shark show up. You never have the same experience in the cage. Sometimes you go in and you'll see one shark, and you'll be in there for 5 hours, and you're like, yeah. But like it makes up for those days. I mean, well, the days like that then get blown out of the water the next day when you get in, and there's 16 sharks for 9 hours straight, and like you're not left alone at all. So it's like anything can happen. And Mother Nature, it's one of the few places in the world where, like I was saying before, where you get to interact with, or you get to witness an apex predator kind of doing its thing in front of you, and you're completely safe. And it's awe-inspiring and also very addicting.
I was going to say, because I've spoken to a few people about shark diving, and everyone seems to bring something different or take something different away from it. Obviously, it's a very personal experience.
Yeah. What
was it like when you first got in the water with a great white shark? Do you remember how you felt and that experience? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. I mean, you like I kind of referred to earlier, it's a natural, I think it's very natural for people to have to be apprehensive or to not, you're not chomping at the bit. You first off, it takes a long time to get out to that island. It's hard to get to. That's half the reason it's such an amazing place. There's not a lot of people there. There's a little fishing village on the other side of the island and a naval base on the south tip, but you're only allowed in this one certain area to dive with them. And it's a migration path for elephant and fur seals and California sea lions. So it's just like a smorgasbord of seal blubber all over this beach, and you can hear it when we're anchored there, just like them yelling at each other on the beach. So it's like the water's really deep. We anchor inside of a crater. It feels like Jurassic Park. Like if you think about, like people always ask me like, what's the island like? I'm like, think about the exact place you would think you would see a great white shark, and that's exactly what this place looks like. Like big snaggly rocks sticking out of the water, and like, so it already looks like a movie set. And then you add, the biggest sharks in the world, and you're in a living movie set pretty much. So yeah, it's you get to the island, so you've been on this boat, and anticipation is building, and all the rest of it, and you go to sleep, and you wake up, and you're just getting to the island, and they take these big cages off the top of the ship and drop them down in the water, and they're making these clanging noises, and they're getting there's hustling, bustling. And so your nerves, your anxiety is starting to grow a little bit, and then finally, they put the weight vest on you and they hook you all up with the hookah line. You get the respirator in your mouth, and like I remember I took like 2 steps down on the dive boat, and this massive shark just slowly swam by the cages. I wasn't even in yet. It was just like 2 feet from the cage, going right past it.
Wow.
And then they open the cage door and it goes like clang. And you're just like, and I'm going to get in there now. And it's got this kind of like ladder thing. You climb down the back. And then it took me the first time in, it took me a good 45 minutes to get, it wasn't I wasn't scared. I was just like, it was first off being in a cage and then wearing weights. And I didn't do a lot. I did lots of like snorkeling and stuff as a kid, but I'd never breathed through a respirator before. And so like there's a little, when you breathe in, there's a little seal you have to break every time. So it's like, there's a little like, takes a little bit of force. And if you're not used to that, it's kind of off-putting. It feels like you're, not getting enough oxygen almost. And so you're in a situation where you're already breathing hard, and then they put that on top of you. So it just, honestly, all the environment stuff, it took me longer to get kind of more situated. But once I did, and once I could like focus on just deep breaths and trying not to, flail around and twist everyone's lines up. I think it wasn't really until one got really close to the cage, and then I could watch its eye like you can literally see the eye turn and look at you as it's going past. And once I did that a couple times, and I realized, how quiet it is, because I've been lucky to be in the water with a bunch of other big animals, and they're constantly making noise. And you can hear them, whales, you smell them pretty much before you even hear them. So it's like, you're always aware that these animals are around. And that was, I think, the number one thing that struck me the first time was just how silent, even when they're on like full attack mode, like just absolutely silent they are, and peaceful. It's like, it's very peaceful, because all you hear is just you breathing, or the occasional like, if someone's getting excited next to you kind of thing. But it's really just, it's just how silent they were. I think that was what struck me mainly the first time. And then, like I said, that rewiring, it's extremely powerful. Some people, it manifests in an emotional response. Other people get really quiet. Some people just yell. Like it's this really amazing thing that happens. It's always when they come back out of the cage, it's, they either make it known as soon as the cage is open, they stick their head out of the water, or it's, you get to talk to them after. And that's one of my favorite parts. Obviously seeing the sharks is my favorite part, but it's also like, the reaction that people get their first time in. It's the rewiring of their brain that happens it can be very powerful for a lot of people. So that's really fun to be a part of.
I was going to say, when you're taking people out on these trips, obviously it's not just the experience of being in the water with these creatures. It's also, like you say, that rewiring around the perception and the night. Do you think that most people, not just necessarily on your trips, but in sort of cage diving trips in general, do you think they come away with a newfound respect for the animals?
Yes. Yeah. And that's, like I was kind of saying earlier, I feel it's kind of I take it as kind of a life goal now, just to do that to as many people as possible. And I wouldn't say it happens on every single trip, if I'm honest. I've been on with, and I'm not trying to big us up, I'm just saying that that boat in particular, like the people that run that boat, if you go out with Nikki and I, Nikki Seavey, she's the other person that owns the company with me. She's more shark crazy than me, if that's possible. But like we come from an absolute angle of like the utmost respect for these animals. So like everything's by the book, there's no touching of sharks. There's no, we're this there to observe. And I'm not saying that other operations run differently, but that's our first and foremost kind of thing, it's them and us kind of thing. So we feel very privileged and very honored to be able to go out there and do it as much as we do and spend as much time with these animals as we do. But we don't take it lightly at all. So it's, I feel like when you're upfront about that kind of stuff with people, and then you also can help kind of debunk a lot of the stuff that they've heard, or that they've, that it helps, and there's like a mutual respect that happens. And then and I think it's a learning opportunity for everyone involved. And I think it's a lot better than just like making them a spectacle. If you kind of introduce a little education into it at the same time, people get that respect, kind of follows that. So I feel like we do a good job of melding the two. where, I mean, in the end of the day, I'm an artist. That's what I'm set out to do. I'm set out to create stuff that I like looking at, and I think other people are going to. So, I tell people that I know a lot about sharks, but that the only reason is because I've obsessed most of my life about them, and I'm in the water with them, and I try and be as most up to date as possible as I can with these animals. But that's one of the most amazing parts about white sharks is we don't know an insane amount about them. Like other animals, we've kind of not completely figured out, but you know what I mean? Like they're very mysterious creatures, and they have these like amazing regenerative properties with their flesh that, could be very beneficial to us. And scientists they're doing more research into that, just for the fact, like we'll see, their mating habits. The male, bites the female in the gills with these massive jaws and kind of latches onto them. And you see these wounds afterwards, and they're horrendous. Like, how is this shark's going to be maimed for life, let alone it's biting its breathing organ? Like, how is this possible? And then the next year you'll see them, they look completely fine. So it's like, and let alone they have another sense than we do with their lateral line and the amount of, disturbances in the water. I've been told by a lot of the researchers out there that through the receptors in their nose, their little dimples, they can feel your heartbeat in the water, because they're so hyper tuned into animals in distress or whatnot, lunch, that they use that to kind of feel the vibration. So Nikki says a lot of the time, and I believe it now after having a couple of experiences, where it's kind of like a dog, if you act scared, it sees a moment of opportunity and whatnot. Not that I'm sticking out my chest to a great white shark, but if you just stand there kind of thing, and you try not to display fear, and you keep calm. Like I've had some amazing experiences lying on the bottom of the cage with no one else in there, not even with my camera, and just kind of like peering out the corner of the cage, and having a massive 17-foot male just do these big looping circles under the boat, down around to the corner of the cage I was in, and literally coming his face like this close to my face, at least a foot, and then coming back up and doing it he did it for almost 2 hours. I got out after about an hour, and I went and had lunch, I think, and I came back out, and dinner, because one of the deckhands was out there, and he was drinking coffee, just watching him do it. He's like, he's still doing it. He was just doing these big kind of looping circles, and I'm pretty sure it's just, they're very curious animals.
Yeah, I guess they've got to be by nature, haven't they? Because obviously they're a predator. They're not going to be a very good predator if they're not sticking their nose into other people's business, pardon the pun. And I think your point around not showing fear, and again, I'm a pure layman, so I could be way off base here, but I've seen, I think it might have been on YouTube or something, I think it was one of the first times I saw someone in the water with a great white shark and not in a cage. And the shark was obviously quite a calm shark by the sort of the looks of things, the way that it was swimming, the body language was cool, calm. It's okay to swim with me, but don't get too close. Yeah. And then the guy, I think his name might have been Andre. For some reason, I think his name might have been Andre. And as the shark sort of almost turned towards him and started to get a little bit closer, the diver did this amazing thing, completely counterintuitive. He actually swam towards the shark and made himself look bigger. And then what he did as the shark, as you sort of described, did the circling, he followed the shark around. He didn't take his eyes off of it. And he said, maintain the eye contact, make yourself as big as you can, and hold your ground.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And I'm just like, that sounds insane based on everything that we kind of know about sharks. But as we say, we've got all of this information now, and these incredible people like yourself and Euan Rannachan and all those other people who are getting in the water with these animals and actually showing us how to behave with them, how we can coexist. And there's so much to learn from them. As you say, it's like, I've got a few shark books, and I've sort of read them sort of cover to cover, and they all take a slightly different take on the animal, but the information fundamentally is the same. It doesn't seem like there's obviously more there to learn, but we haven't quite broken through into the animal's world yet to really understand a lot of kind of what it does. So, I think
the unknowing is the majority of that's the fear. That's just like, that's where the fear kind of creeps in. Like we substitute the unknowing for fear in itself. We're just like, and I think that's natural. I think I've seen them do this. Amazing. You probably know about these things, but they size each other up. So they don't like eat. They don't even like swimming next to each other. Like if they get too close to each other, they're like, oh, and they kind of sometimes like shoot off like super fast. So they don't even like getting very close to each other, let alone us or the cages and whatnot. But I mean, they're very inquisitive. So they'll come up and look. But they do this amazing thing where they size each other up. So sometimes. You've seen, I think, a couple of my photos when I post the shark growls when they're gaping and their mouths are just wide open and they're swimming.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So that to me is the most incredible thing in the entire world to see, because it's like a gorilla banging its chest kind of thing. It's the way of sharks just saying like, get out of here to all the other sharks around here. Like I'm eating this stuff. This is mine. And but they swim really slow when they do it, and they just open their mouth. They're like trawlers kind of, and they just open their mouth completely wide. And if you're not ready for it and you turn around, and there's just so it's happened to me twice now, and just trying to get my camera up and try and snap a couple photos, because it's the most amazing thing in the entire world. But they do that to kind of scare other sharks away, and then they also size each other up all the time. So if there's two quite big sharks and they're pretty active, you'll see them do this. It looks like there's, when you see a movie and they're like, oh, the sharks are swarming, or it's like the shark infested water, and you look down and like the sharks, usually they're going in kind of like a circle. Most of the time it's just them sizing each other up and who's going to get the first go. There's a pecking order, there's an unspoken pecking order. Sometimes you'll get a really feisty youngster in there who just like comes and he wrecks shop and just comes through and takes a bait and then pisses everyone off, and then all the sharks kind of disappear. But I have some friends too where they've seen sharks bite other sharks just for the fact that they think that they're being territorial and stuff. So it's you're watching a whole kind of like ecosystem, civilization, working it out in front of you, and it's more of that rewiring stuff that happens that you only get when you're actually in the water with them. It's one thing to watch it in a documentary or on a movie or something like that, but when you actually kind of sit there and watch it happen, I mean, it's probably like, it's very like going to probably like Serengeti, and I've never done it, which I really want to though someday, going safari and doing all that kind of stuff and seeing these animals in their natural habitat, not in the zoo and not in an aquarium, but actually doing what they do and they would be doing if we weren't there, kind of thing, it's really special, and it's an incredible experience.
Well, I'll share one very quick story. It's not shark related, but I went to Kenya, and we went on a safari. We were out there for about 3 nights, and it was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. And there was one experience that I will never ever forget, because as you say, you can't really appreciate it when you're watching a documentary. You've got to be out there with the animals. And I'd always been a little bit skeptical about how well does natural camouflage on an animal work? How effective can it really be? And when you're on a safari base, there's loads of jeeps all over the place, and they're all connected by radio. And what will happen is there'll be a call that'll be like, oh, we've seen a leopard here, or we've seen an elephant here, and everyone will basically go to that area, so everyone can go basically see the animals. And we'd been told that there hadn't been a leopard seen for about 3 or 4 weeks. So we wouldn't expect to see that. And obviously there's the big 5 that you want to try and see. Within 20 minutes of us being out in the truck, someone said, hey, there's a leopard in this place. We're going to go there now. So it's like, okay, cool. And we got there, and there's about 3 or 4 jeeps. And the story was that a rabbit had run into a bush and the leopard had chased it. And the jeep started to circle. It wasn't a particularly large area. It wasn't huge, but it was lots of bushes and trees and things like that. So it was quite dense. And the jeeps kept circling around, and the guides were trying to find and locate this leopard, because that's the one we wanted to see. And we were probably there for about 45 minutes. And after about 45 minutes, everyone was just like, it's probably gone. So chances are we should probably move on before it gets too dark. Yeah, cool, no problem. And I swear to God, this is the truth. As we pulled away, my particular jeep, because I was standing out above the roof, because they've got like sunroofs and stuff cut out so you can get a really good view. Yeah. As we're pulling away, I swear to God, I literally just happened to look at a bush, and a pair of eyes was looking straight back at me, and I went, don't move. Told the driver to stop. I said, it's been right there the whole time. And I let me see, it's probably less than 20 feet away.
Wow.
And it had been there the whole time. It happened to just be in this particular bush that was quite brown and strawy, like grass, like really tall, long grass. Yeah. It'd been there the whole time. And I hadn't seen it 20 feet away, and I'm like, okay, I'm convinced these animals are absolutely perfectly adapted now.
Yeah.
There's no argument there at all. It's like, okay, I bow to your experience. You're a leopard. You've got it covered. But it just like back to your point around sharks, it's like they're so perfectly adapted for their environment, but it's about breaking into their world and their rituals and their personalities and their lifestyle. I mean, I've read books, I've watched a lot of documentaries, and you can start to identify sharks by obviously their looks, if they've been scarred, or their size or whatever, but you can also look at their personality as well. Some are more inquisitive than others, and all that. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, which fascinates me in terms of shark personalities, it's like, are sharks very, very different, or is there sort of a general consistent characteristic that threads sort of through all of them, or is every shark sort of completely different?
Oh, I mean, they're like people, man. I mean, I can, Rhett, who I have on my forearm here, he's one of my favorites, and he always eats seagulls that are sitting on top of the water. Like, if you see a seagull around and then all of a sudden you don't see a seagull around, Rhett's around. And like, I can almost set my watch to it. Like, he's one of the only sharks I see do it. Like, I see the other sharks go for it, but he's one of the only ones that actually gets the seagulls. But yeah, there's a bunch. There's ones that we always know eat too much, and they come looking like humongous, and then sometimes they're really skinny, and they haven't eaten. Like Doug, one of the sharks is named Doug. There, you can once you're in the water and you hang out with them for long enough, the personalities come out in spades, and you can, some like staying far back and then doing these kind of darting attacks on the tuna that we put out. Some like to come up real close and give us a good sniff. Some like to rule of thumb, usually the older ones later in the season is when they show up, and they tend to stay further back. The younger guys are, they're not as hip to our games, and they'll stay around us closer. But definitely the personality. It's the only time it gets a little where I won't be as close to them is if a new shark does show up, because I always like to give it its time and let it. We want to look at it as much as they want to look at us, kind of thing at that point. Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing that's been happening at Guadalupe lately, which is a great thing, is that younger juvenile sharks white sharks are showing up. And so there's a theory that there's a nursery close by that we didn't know about, that these sharks are showing up from, and that's fantastic news. It's a little hair raising when you get there, and like there's sharks now that can fit through the bars of our cages sometimes, and you're like, that gives people pause. There's now been modifications to the cages so that doesn't happen. But when they first started showing up, we were like, we should probably do something about this just in case. So not that the sharks are trying to get in our cages, but when a shark goes for the bait, it's flying blind for
find yourself in the cage, or
so it becomes perfect angle and whatnot. And then we bait away from the cages. And I'd like to touch on that just for a second if I can, because a lot of people get bent out of shape with my photos because they see these ropes in the sharks' mouths, and they think that there are hooks attached to them and all the rest, and there absolutely isn't. They're hemp, very weak ropes that we use that the sharks cut through in a split second. It's just because I'm taking so many frames that you can actually see the rope, kind of thing. And they're chunks of yellowfin tuna, which they're hunting there at the island itself. I mean, the yellowfin are all around us. So, it's, some people get pretty bent out of shape about cage diving, especially with the baiting and whatnot. And they think that it's somehow teaching these sharks the wrong things to do, and and to me, I think it's ludicrous that someone could even try and make that point. They're massive animals. They're these tiny little chunks of tuna that they're getting is not feeding them for. It's just a snack. If anything, it's just kind of honing their skills, and they're practicing, if you want. But they're doing this in that water day in, day out, whether we're there or not, kind of thing. And the fact that we are there is actually. Especially at that island, there's a good chance if we didn't show up, which everyone was really upset about this year just for the fact of COVID and all that, and we couldn't go, that illegal fishermen will come in and just, decimate the population, because it's, they're big animals, lots of meat on there, and can be used for, whether it's finning or dog food or whatever stupid thing they want to try and make out of them. And it would just, really cripple the ecosystem around there. So it's, thankfully, from everything I've heard, everything was fine. It does help that there's a naval base on the south tip of the island that kind of, we have, when we get in those waters, it's a protective national reserve through Mexico, the protected waters. It's a national park, so it's, there's all the things in place to protect these animals, but just, things can happen. So us being there keeps those people out, and it also is, we work with lots of researchers. There's a full-time researcher who lives on the island. For some reason, the East Coast sharks, like in Nantucket and all around that area with Jaws, they get a lot of attention and a lot more kind of research done. And I think it's not that people aren't going out there and doing research. We donate all our images to MCI, who makes this book, which anyone watching, is a really cool book if you're interested in great white sharks. So they put a new one out every year, and we contribute. It's just it's left and right photos of all the sharks that we see at the island. I think we're up to almost like 400 something now.
I was going to say that's a really nice thick book. So there's obviously a lot of sharks around, which is great.
We donate every year all our images, and then it's painstaking work, but go through it and identify what sharks what, and each trip we go on, we make a list and we send it out to anyone who came with us and tell you exactly who we saw, and we have like a running total. But it's a good way of keeping track of, well, obviously not only who you saw, but then also like how, if they have any wounds, how they're healing, or what size they are, and you can. It's a nice thing to have. It's a great tool. So, but stuff like that, it's really spurring on more people, I think, to come out and give these animals a good look, because you can go to South Africa and you can go to New Zealand and see massive white sharks. And there's a couple places in Australia with like Rodney Fox and stuff who the water clarity is amazing, but for like day in, day out, Guadalupe is, it's really hard to beat. Just the visibility and the size of shark we get there is, it's hard to find that anywhere else in the world, kind of thing. So,
yeah, because I've been researching places to go, and Guadalupe consistently comes up for the reason you just said. The amount of sharks that you can see in the area and the visibility. Yeah. Just to go back to, because something you said that was really interesting, it sparks another question in my mind. In terms of the industry itself and the regulations, is it something that's regulated, or is it something that you feel needs to be regulated more tightly? What are your views on that?
More tightly. I mean, there's always stuff you could probably do around just like the respect aspect, like I was talking about before. I think a lot of times it's easy for a lot of the other companies out there doing their thing to lose track of animal first kind of thing. It costs money, obviously, to get out there. So it's, but I think a lot of the companies, I get it. They go for kind of like comfort and all the rest first, whereas it's like it needs to be drilled into people. Like touching sharks, everyone goes like, why can't you touch sharks? And it's like, well, you don't go up and just touch a stray dog that you don't know, kind of thing. So it's like so it's just like it's just a matter of respect thing. I think that's the thing that I always come back to, because like that's, one misstep in one of those things could have horrible effects, and that would be trickle down for everyone else. So it's the respect thing is always high on mine. Anyone who goes with us, kind of the forefront in their heads.
I think that's a really important thing to sort of take away from this conversation. If anything, is if you are going to go on a tour, make sure that they are animal first. It's not just about the experience, but also the care of the animal. I mean, I guess there's two things you can look at it. First of all, one, if the animal becomes used to being touched by a human being, how does that affect it in its long-term life? Does it become, I can't think of a better word, but tame to humans, which would be very bizarre. But second as well, it's like, well, if you want to touch the shark, then you've got to let the shark touch you back, and there's only one way it's going to do that.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So it's just like, just as you say, be respectful, and just enjoy the experience. I mean, you're seeing one of the greatest apex predators that's ever lived. Yeah. Watching it in its natural habitat should probably be enough, right?
Yeah, and then like even the third thing, if you want to be selfish about it, if you go out and stick your hand out and touch a shark, like I was saying, I don't even like to get touched by them, like other sharks coming up and touching them. So if you go and touch them, and they're so sensitive to any, I mean, they can feel your heartbeat in the water. So you think your little hand or your GoPro sticks out and touches it, they're going to really appreciate that. 9 times out of 10, if that does happen, they'll just take off, and you won't see them the rest of the day. So it's like you're missing out if you do that kind of stuff. And it's like, I get it. There's like, you want to be able to say you touched a great white shark, but it's just not worth. It's not worth the risk to you. Or just kind of the whole reason you're there kind of thing. So it's you want them as around you as much as possible, but you don't want to be interacting physically with them. That's for sure.
No, exactly. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up, because I totally agree. I mean, I've never done a shark diving trip yet, but when I do, that would absolutely be the attitude that I think myself and majority of people who have done the research into sharks would probably take.
Yep.
That was brilliant. Thanks, Euan. That was amazing. So the next question I've got, I mean, like you've kind of answered it, I think, already in our little conversation before we started recording, but what does your wife and family and friends think of how you spend your time?
Right. My wife is like super supportive. She's actually, her company's in charge of creating the machines to do all the COVID testing. So she's used to high stress situations herself. But she's been shark diving with me before. She actually, I think it was last year or the year before, year before. And then loved it. She's a little claustrophobic with breathing through the respirator. So that was her, like the hardest thing for her to get over, but she loved the experience. So thank God she's on board, and she knows, I mean, I don't know if it comes across in this interview, but I'm a passionate person. I try and be as positive as possible. A couple of years ago, I made a kind of pact with myself that on social media and whether it's Facebook or whatever, I was only going to try and put positivity out there, kind of thing, because I was seeing the trend that we see all too often on Facebook and Instagram and all that people can just be really horrible to each other, or just don't take the time to actually either think or educate themselves on what they're trying to say. And so I made it a thing that if I was going to continue with social media, that I was just going to try and put positivity as much as I can, or things that I'm interested in or inspiring or all that kind of stuff. So she knows that I take, first off, like I take inspiration very seriously, which is a weird thing to say, but like, I feel like when as an artist, especially when you do get inspired by things, if you don't capitalize on that, it's like the worst. It's really bad for me. It's one thing to have creative block and all the rest, but like she knows when I get in a vein of creating or photographing, or my obsession with predatory animals like this, it's kind of like it's a weird thing to say, but like life's work. It's what I feel like I was put here to do. So she's very supportive of that, and I can't be happier about that at all. And then with my boys, I mean, they just know Daddy Shark, and she's going to go see the sharks, and they can't wait to do it. And they're confused why they can't go and do it themselves, which they can. It's just I spend so much time in the cage. I don't want to have to worry about them running around on the boat and all the rest. But they'll, as soon as I think they're old enough to do it, they'll definitely be out there with me.
How old are your boys now?
7 and 4.
Okay, yeah. And what when would be maybe the right sort of age? I'm asking purely for people out there who might be thinking the same question.
Sure.
When would be a good age to maybe take your children or bring them along?
I think it all depends. People obviously know their kids. I mean, I think there's no really age limit. I think they say like maybe it's 13 on the Solmar, but I think like if you talk to them and your kid is, and you think he's mature enough to go out there and kind of be by himself, or to be able to dive, and there's obviously a lot of technical aspects to it. So, but I'd say like to really enjoy it, I think teenage years, like middle, like maybe anywhere from 10 and up. I think honestly, I think the younger the better. If you can indoctor them into, thinking for themselves and actually getting them to see an animal this size, let alone if they were going to be they're shark crazy or not, but just like I cannot stress enough the whole rewiring thing. It's so powerful. There's like if there's any aspect of this that I wish people could like, yeah, I would love everyone to see a shark, but like it's just the rewiring, because it really shows you like what have I been saying no to my entire life because I thought it was too scary, or I couldn't do it, or I couldn't like this is one of the few times in your life you can actually do something that people are going to probably call you crazy for, but you're going to do it, and then you're going to realize that was incredible. Probably other things are skydiving, which I probably would never do anyway, and stuff like that.
It will take you about half an hour to fall because of that beard. You're not going to be.
I kept getting pushed upwards. But yeah, no, it's one of those. It's like it's an absolute out of body experience that I just wish more people could experience, so they could. It's so hard to put into words, that kind of rewiring thing, that it can be very powerful for a lot of people. Even if you don't ever go back, you'll always have that kind of thing. So I think my friends a lot of times think I'm nuts, like a lot of other people, and that's fine. But they appreciate the photos, and I think that's another really cool thing about sharks is the fact that everyone has an opinion, whether it's a positive or negative one. There's no that you don't find, you don't meet many people that go like, do you like great white sharks? And they go, yeah, they're all right. Like there's no middle of the road answer to that question. It's either like they terrify me or they're so amazing.
Yeah, you're right. And that's exactly what it's like when I speak to Jaws fans. It's like when that movie scared the hell out of me, I'll never swim in the ocean again, or I've got a shark cage dive book next week. Do you know what I mean? It's one or the other. There's no sort of middle ground.
And even the people that are like terrified by them, they're still amazed by them. They're still like they're still like there's a mystifiable. It's hard to nail down to exactly describe it. And I'd say like if you look around in culture today, like sharks are everywhere. Like if you go into, especially here in the States, you walk into a Target or a big chain store selling clothes and all that, and you go in the kids section, like 90% of the kids, little boys, even girl stuff, have sharks all over them. Like sharks are everywhere. We're as a civilization absolutely fascinated by them, which I mean I don't really have a point to that, just to the fact that like they're always around. Like I think we subliminally we really were amazed and kind of, they are dinosaurs. That's another thing. You probably follow Mike Coots. He's one of my buddies, and he's kind of the one that kind of drilled into me from, I mean, he's a shark attack survivor. He had a tiger shark bite his leg off, and you'd think he'd be the last person to be standing up for these animals, but he's now foremost in conservation and bringing awareness to these animals. And he's the one that's really drilled into me, just the fact that we have an obligation as people who spend so much time with these animals and introduce so many people like to how we think they are, that we kind of have to be their voice. Or at least help, at least don't be passive and sit and just let people, talk nonsense or whatever it is on top of them. Like it's our, whether through our images or coming on a trip or like the movie stuff that I try and do, just to show people that what they're missing out on, kind of thing. So. Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting thing because, as you say, it's about rewiring the way we see sharks and that perception. And I think if we can do it for sharks, we can do it for so many other things, and we can start to just think twice. And I think that, and we'll come on to Jaws in a bit, but I just think one of the things that's now available is, I think that, and particularly, I mean, I'm 41. How old are you?
35.
35. So back when we were probably first understanding sharks for the first time, we probably had to go to the libraries, get a book, that kind of thing. Now, anybody can get on the internet. They can learn about these animals firsthand, because you can look at the amazing videos and films and things like that you and Mike Coots and others are making. And ultimately that decision and that perception can be altered almost instantly, and go, well, actually, okay, it's a scary film, but actually this is the reality. Do you know what I mean? And I think, I mean, there was a really cool documentary about Jaws about, I think it was for the 20th anniversary. It was on BBC, and it was called In the Teeth of Jaws. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard of it. I don't know if I actually have seen it, but I
I
have heard
think
of
it's
it.
on YouTube. It's about 50 minutes long. It was just to celebrate the 20-year anniversary of Jaws.
Cool.
And Peter Benchley was on it, and he was talking about sort of the impact of Jaws, and he said basically sort of two things have happened. One, people have got the wrong perception of sharks, but also there are so many people out there that are fascinated and want to learn more about these animals. And he would get hundreds, if not thousands, of letters a year from kids wanting to be marine biologists or, work with sharks or protect them in some way. As the Daily Jaws, we now see that as well. We get so many emails from kids just going like, so how can I learn more about this? Where's the resource? Where's this and where's that? Which is why we're now making an effort to partner with people like yourself, get you in front of the audience and in front of the camera and explain that these incredible creatures, the work that needs to be done, the work that's been happening. And I guess my next question is, for the people that can't maybe get out to Guadalupe or South Australia or South Africa, wherever it is, and for whatever reason, so that the land lovers, if you like,
Yep.
what can people like that do to try and protect sharks or start that rewiring process for themselves?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, first thing would be was to get yourself. Following people like Mike and Ocean and people like that who are putting out information to try and break down these stereotypes. Yeah, and like my stuff too, if you'd like, which would be awesome. But it's really just it's a matter of education. Like it's educating yourself, whether that's through reading books about sharks or watching films or talking to people about them. But like I think it's not really a subject that many people kind of dive into. They're just like, shark. If you 9 times out of 10, if you go up to someone and say like, what do you think about sharks? Oh, they're terrifying. I don't want to be in the water with them. And then you say like, why is that? And you do like just that secondary question, like, why do you find them scary? And they're like, oh, because they're going to eat you. And like, where have you heard this? Or like, how do you know that? Have you been in the water with them? And they go, no, but I wouldn't get in because they're going to eat me. And they're like, so it's like this vicious round and round, you go. And it's it's a tough question, if I'm honest, because like to really, it's so blatantly obvious once you do it, like once you're in the water with them, that it's like, I wish there was an easy way to just, to kind of describe that. I guess the best is just to continuously kind of, if you're in that vein, just kind of continuously consume content that's put sharks in a good light. Hollywood is it portrays sharks exactly how you'd think they'd be portrayed. And sharks they're apex predators. They can do stuff like that, but they're not out single-handedly to get us. Like the fact that here, especially on the California coast, we have a plethora of big white sharks. Farallon Islands are right here. There's it's the triangle, the shark cafe they call it. That's right in the middle. Like it's pretty much you can draw lines from Hawaii.
That's San Francisco. Is it near there, or am I thinking?
Very close. There's about an hour boat ride out from San Francisco, and there's like you can pretty much draw a line from there to Hawaii down to Guadalupe in this triangle. And these sharks kind of spend their time going around this triangle mostly. So they're like, if you've been in the water out anywhere close to there, you've been close to a white shark, you just didn't know it. And it's like if they were these man-eating creatures that everyone thinks, shark attacks would be a huge problem. Like we would have lots of people getting eaten all the time. So
that's the thing, and we recently this is one of the other things as well that I think really frustrates me about this, and I guess again it comes onto a question around Jaws a bit later on, but when you look at the way the media portray sharks as well, there are people that haven't even seen Jaws that assume a shark is going to want to eat them. And it's like, well, you're not really basing it on any kind of fact. You might even be basing that on someone that's just trying to sell you their content through some kind of sensationalist headline, and it's about, well, break through the headline and look at the actual facts. And it's just like, I think there was a headline recently where they described monster shark tagged for research. And it's like, well, actually, that's probably a shark that was just minding its own business, doing its thing. It's getting plucked out of the water and it's getting prodded with a stick. Yeah. That's probably a more accurate headline. Do you know what I mean?
No one's going to click on that.
Say that again?
No one's going to click on that, though. That's you're hitting on the point that you know, it's bigger than just sharks. It's media in general now. Like it's, you know, they're just trying to get you to click on their article and see their ads and all that kind of stuff. That's all that matters. It's sensationalized. It's entertainment. Like once that, you know, that's a whole different conversation, but it doesn't help the stigma attached to these animals, you know. But you know, when my stuff gets published, it's, you know, they'll do the interview and then it just gets, you know, the title is always like insane shark photographer gets like, and it's you know, it's great because a lot of people get to see the work and hopefully my story gets out there. But I much prefer to do stuff like this where you can actually hear it from the source kind of thing, where it's not like, because, you know, I'd say Reed, you're just saying like, how do people get more involved or have, you know, the rewiring happen without actually having to get in the water? And the reason it's so tough is because there's so many filters that this information goes through by the time it gets to people that, you know, if you just do a Google for my name, it's insane shark photographer is like the first thing. I'm like, I'm pretty sane.
Or what was it, Jaws photo or Jaws photographer or something like that always comes up. Yeah, I've noticed it. We've got to ask you about the photo as well, because this is how we sort of cross paths. I think first of all, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it last year? I think it was. Or was it? Yeah, it was last year, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? And it was of a great white shark, because you took it from its sort of belly side as it was basically going towards the surface, and it looks almost exactly like the Jaws poster. I think a little while ago you even did a Photoshop tweak just to see how sort of different it was.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that day, that photograph, how that happened, and when you realised you had something sort of pretty special on your hands?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those photos that anyone who comes on the boat with us or all my other kind of sharky friends that go out there and shoot have been trying to get for a long time. And so when like I was saying, 98% of the time these sharks just are very aerodynamic and don't have their mouths open, and they just kind of cruise through the water very, very slowly. But you can tell sometimes when they're you know, they're going to go for the bait really quickly. They do this kind of wiggle where their entire body like starts. They go from this very methodical side to side, but all of a sudden there's a little twitch, and they take their pectoral fins and they kind of angle them in a way that it helps them track through the water. So you'll see them. It's just kind of a position they put their body in, and when they do that, you know that there's a good chance they're about to either breach or go really quickly towards the bait. And so I happened to just be looking down, and Squirrel, what's the name of that shark, was below us, and I could see it start to. It was kind of like nosing up, so it was looking at the bait, and it was way below the cage, and then it started doing its wiggle, and I just caught the beginning of the wiggle, so I knew that she was going to come up really quickly. So I just managed to. I looked away from her, and I spun around to the front of the cage, and there's a bar that you can get your camera out of the front, and then I could hook my elbows and keep myself I barely had time to kind of stable myself, and she was already in front. And as she had been kicking, she kind of rolled like this, so her belly was now facing me. And at the time, I wasn't thinking this is going to be it, but I just was trying to, all I had time to do is get her in the frame and then make sure hope to God it was in focus. Mm-hmm. And like as it came up, I was just like snap, snap, snap. And she actually didn't even breach. Sometimes I do that. They check off the bait at the last minute, whether it's the angle they don't like or there's another shark around or whatever it is. So come speeding up, and then at the last minute, just kind of put her nose forward and just use the kind of momentum to kind of make her like arch this way, and didn't even break the surface. Just got really close to it. I think maybe her fin came out and then just kind of dove off. And sometimes you have time to go back in your camera and like spin through the images really quick. Usually it's just to make sure that it's in the frame. I can look kind of if it's in focus, but it's kind of one of those things until you get back, on the boat later on and download everything and check it out. So I was hopeful it was in focus, but at that time, I think there was a couple other sharks around at the time. So I was just busy, trying to make sure I captured anything that was happening with them. But I kind of had that. And sometimes what I do is if something cool happens, cause I'll take, 3,000-4,000 images every time I'm down. And, if something really spectacular happens and I want to find it really fast when I download my images, I take a photo of my hand So like something amazing will happen and I'll just shoot a quick frame of my hand just so like when I'm going through them at a glance, if I see my hand, I know around there was something that I wanted to see. So I did that really quick. Went on with the day, got out a little while later, and then I downloaded the images and I kind of went through the sequence and thank God they were in focus and it looked pretty good. So I did a couple things. Like I think the buoy was in the top right. I took the buoy out, and but yeah, I was pretty excited about it. But yeah, and then it did really well, and like a lot of people liked it. And I actually put it out like pretty much when I got home, and nothing happened. It wasn't until I think someone from the Daily Mail called me, and then it kind of snowballed from there. It was on Fox News and just all over the place. But it's been a really good tool to be able to have these conversations, which is really all I could have asked for. So I'm just now I got to find another photo to try and recreate.
I was going to say, then what you've got to do next is a water skier so you can do Jaws 2.
Yeah.
That's what you need. Now, I can't water ski, so don't even bother asking.
Okay.
And since then, I mean, has the photo, obviously we're talking about, say, a year or two since, but is there still echoes of the photo? Do you still get people asking to talk to you? Obviously, aside from myself, is there still a lot of attention whenever you show it? Everyone's like, oh my God, that's the Jaws photo.
Sometimes. I think more now it's had a life of its own. Like it'll come, like people send me, people use it all the time, which is slightly annoying just for the fact that I get, but it's fine. I get sent it all the time. And a lot of people have it tattooed on their body now, which is another amazing thing that comes out of doing these kind of things.
Really?
So yeah. I mean,
wow.
At least 5 people will send it to me tattooed on them. And which I'm honored, but like I think it was funny though, just because I'm like it was recently, it was a couple months ago, and I was like, how close is this thing to the Jaws one? And obviously, like the Jaws one, it was a Mako, correct? Like the original, like the painting.
Yeah, it was a model of a Mako shark in the Natural History Museum that the artist sort of sketched out. Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder what it would take to turn mine into a Mako, pretty much, and I did that kind of Photoshop, chopping it up, and I mean, it's close, but it's to get it to the Hollywood stuff, you got to really stretch that thing out.
But again, that's kind of that was a really interesting thing because it showed. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Jaws poster is iconic, greatest film poster probably ever made, most recognizable, that sort of stuff. But you can see how things have been exaggerated and skewed from the reality.
Sure.
And I think that again, we're getting towards the Jaws conversation, but you can just kind of see how, again, that's part of the rewiring process. It's like even things like the poster, have been exaggerated to sell a certain fear or ultimately just a product and an entertainment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's art. Like so, like even with my photos, like if it's I make stuff that I want to look at and I think is interesting to look at, whether it's completely skewing with the colors or whatever it is. Like I think it's and you're allowed to do that. That's why like the Jaws, it's a film. It was a film. Well, we're probably about to touch on this when you talk about Jaws itself, but to me, I think it's a brilliant movie, obviously, and I'm not sure it gets made. I heard rumblings that they're making another. Are they rebooting it? Do you know? All right. Well, I'm just saying, like,
just for the sake of the camera, I can't possibly deny or confirm.
Okay. So, I need Steven Spielberg to call me though, because I've got an image for his poster. But I don't know. It's a tough one because obviously it got a lot of people really excited about sharks and I always think of that as a win just because if people were talking about it. But like I said before, I think people are going to talk about sharks even if you didn't have movies like Jaws. So I selfishly love it and I'm glad they've made it. But like there's also an argument to be made that it made telling people that sharks aren't going to eat them very difficult.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's that to be said for it too. So it's It's a tricky one, but it is obviously it's a fantastic film. So it's I think it's done more good than harm. I'd like to think, and that's how I'm going to play it.
No, and I think that's probably fair. I mean, I think Jaws is a very blamable scapegoat when it comes to the perception of sharks and the sort of the sensational headlines and stuff. Because as soon as you put the word Jaws in a newspaper headline, as we've already said, people are automatically going to think sharks, very likely, or people always allude it back because it was just such a phenomenon at the time, and it's almost become like folklore. Everyone knows the story, even if they haven't seen the film. They know it's about a shark that wants to eat people. That's basically it. And as you say, to try and rewire the mind and unpaint that picture and paint it with reality without robbing from the legacy of the cinematic entertainment of Jaws. I mean, as you say, it's an amazing film, but I think for people like myself, when I look back at the film, when I first watched it when I was a kid, so I was probably about 4, maybe 5 years old. Have your kids seen Jaws yet, by the way?
It's a great question. I don't know if they'd sit through it. They need to be like, there's parts of it they definitely would sit through, but like, I'm going to try it. I think my oldest would, but my youngest one loves animals so much that like, if he sees any kind of, it'd be interesting to do it with him, because he's like, he'd probably tell me a bunch of times that shark's not being very nice. Like, he's going to tell me that a bunch of times.
This is the thing, isn't it? It's the one thing, because I've had this debate / argument with a few people before, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, Jaws is about a shark. It's not about all sharks, and this shark is obviously, he's just really pissed off for whatever reason, and he's decided that he's going to come in and he's going to take out his frustrations. I personally think Jaws was a teenage, adolescent shark that just grew a little bit too soon.
Yeah.
He got bullied by his friends, and right, well, bollocks to you lot, comes into Amity and just starts creating havoc. He's in a bad mood. Whereas most sharks would probably swim by Amity and go, yeah, you know what, don't worry, I'll go back and eat some seals or whatever it is. So it's just one fictional shark in one fictional town. We have the same reaction when, for example, I don't know, Twister. Remember that movie with Bill Paxton? It's like, when you see a tornado, it's like, I'm never going to leave the house again. No, of course, you got to go do your shopping. You've got to go live your life. Well, you can still go swimming at the beach. Just be careful, be aware of it.
See, the thing is, too, I think with I mean, it doesn't have to be just sharks. It can be anything, but like, people just don't want to take the time most of the time to actually do the research into that. So they'll just stick and that's fine. They've got other things to fill their time with, but it's like, the problem is when that mindset, when you start painting with a broad brush and like that many people start feeling like, why do we have sharks? And it opens the door for, people to go out and cull sharks, or to fin them, or to do whatever it is. So that's the danger, and that's always like I don't know the answer. I don't know what to say there, but it's to me, it's like, I look at it as Jaws as art, and also like bringing awareness to, like, it at least got people talking about sharks, whether it was negative or positive. At least people were like more mindful about them, kind of thing. And like to your point, Nikki's told me about times where she's been in the cage and a brand new shark has showed up, or a shark that's just a bit off. Like, they can get parasites, they can get things that they're Mother Nature is Mother Nature. So like, we can control as far as we can, but she's like, they don't come and try and attack us. We can definitely tell that they're there, like, looking at us and giving us a good once over, wondering. I look like a giant elephant seal in a wetsuit. There's no getting around that. So like, to anyone should be scared in the water, it should be me. But you just give it comes back to that respect thing. If you're respectful to them and you're not hanging your camera out and shaking around and getting them to come up to it and all that kind of stuff, and you just are the fly on the wall, then you've got absolutely nothing to worry about. But that's easier said than done, kind of thing. Most people, and whether that's through the education they've had or the films they've watched or whatever it is, it is what it is. But I love Jaws, and if they ever make another, I'll love that one too.
Well, let me ask you another question then, because it's interesting you said that. What did you think of the sequels to Jaws?
I mean, I've seen them. They are what they are. Some are they are what they are. But again, it's art, or it's, you know, Hollywood trying to make more money off of, you know, I think they do that to a lot of films though, where they just keep going, where you should have just stopped when you were ahead. But it's you know, the fact that they made so many, I think, is another testament to this. The fact that people love sharks, and there's like, you know, there's something there for sure. So, I mean, I think the most amazing, to me, the cleverest part of Jaws, and what everyone will tell you, is the way it was scored, and then like not seeing the shark so much, just letting your imagination run wild. And I think that I mean, they did such a good job of playing off of like the unknown, like you can't see it, what you can't see, and like, so I think, and it was, you know, whether that was just for the fact that, you know, the animatronics weren't as up to snuff as they are now, or, you know, CGI and all the rest of it, but it's still so effective. It's such an effective shark movie compared to a lot of even the stuff that comes out now. Do you have a modern shark movie you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I watch shark movies for two reasons. One, just to see what direction they take the story, and also how they create the shark.
Yeah.
I think probably my favorite recently is probably The Shallows. I think it was really good. I thought it was they didn't try to make it over long, which I think was really smart. I think it's about 90 minutes, maybe just a little bit more. It didn't have a particularly big setup, say like Jaws, where half of it's on land and half of it's at sea. It's just this character finds herself in this situation where she's basically stuck in the middle of, I think it's like a lagoon or bay.
Yeah.
And basically there's a shark stalking her. What do you do? And I just think keep the premise as simple as possible. It doesn't need to be complex.
Yeah.
And as long as you get a decent actress, and Blake Lively's a decent actress, I mean, she's good in that film. And I think the way that they depicted the shark was really good. Not just the way that it looked, but also the way it behaved as well. From what I could see, and again, you can probably tell me infinitely more, but it seemed to be realistic. It seemed to be been well researched. I think the ending was mad. I think the way that, I'm not trying to give anything away, the ending, the way that the shark is, shall we say, dealt with, is ridiculous, but it's that sensational Hollywood ending that we all kind of need.
Yeah.
That one, I thought, that is actually quite good. And also the way that, to your point about how you didn't see too much of the shark in Jaws, the way that they shot the shark as well from different angles and interesting places, I thought it's allowing us to build that picture of the shark in our mind without actually seeing it until later on. What did you think of it? Or have you another favorite one?
No, same thing. I was going to say The Shallows too. I just love the shark model they use. I thought it was really accurate, and even the way it swam really fast. They do this like really vigorous wiggle kind of thing I was talking about earlier when they go off, and especially that last scene when it's going down towards the ground. It's like it was very accurate. But yeah, no, and it does play off the not being able, like when she's clinging to that rock and it's at nighttime and stuff, and it's just like, you know, your mind just runs wild, and then a little reflection off the water and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's obviously not the same level as Jaws, but I think the way that it portrayed the shark, and obviously I should probably not like it just for the fact that it's eating people again, but it's a great film. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I mean, I think I asked that just for the fact that it's so hard to make a really, unless you're just going for like the slapstick angle, but like it's hard to make a satisfying Jaws shark kind of horror film. That's why I think Jaws is so amazing, and it was, you know, done at a time where we don't have all the, you know, tricks and all the rest that we do now. So that's probably the two that I would say are my favorite anyway, The Shallows and
I think as well, when I was speaking to the director of Santa Jaws, she was saying that Santa Jaws was off the back of this spate of crazy shark movies that started with Sharknado. So I think the shark movie genre, even though it seems to have quietened down a little bit, it became a bit farcical, a bit funny, a bit of a joke, because I think, and again testament to the way that Jaws is such an amazing piece of craft from a filmmaking point of view. Yeah. You can't replicate that. I mean, when you look at Jaws, particularly sort of my age now, it's such a much more character-driven piece. It's like when I was a kid, I used to watch it for the blood and the guts and the gore and the shark. Now I'm fully invested in these characters, and I see a lot of different people and also myself in these characters as well, which I think there's another stroke of genius. I think a lot of people can identify with the characters. So to try and do a character-driven, realistic shark movie that isn't farcical, but also portrays the reality of the sharks as well, which kind of gets back to that rewiring thing that we've been talking about. That's really difficult to
Yeah, very much so.
do you know what I mean? It must be really hard, because would a new shark movie would you have to have some kind of reason why the shark is misbehaving, so you don't portray the shark like sort of Deep Blue Sea, where they're extracting brain matter and cells so they can try and cure Alzheimer's, which is just insane. Do you know what I mean? Which way do you go with that kind of premise?
And I think even with like Shark Week and stuff like that, they always err on the fantastical side, where they'll come up with this, like, they always show that stupid fin photo next to the boat in like the turn of the century, and they say this is a 40-foot megalodon that was like stuff like that. The sensationalism, it doesn't do any favors. And like I mean, I love Shark Week because everyone loves Shark Week. So look at Shark Week. Even like people who have no idea about or don't even like animals are stoked on Shark Week. Like it's an amazing thing, but it's like I feel like at least in the last 10 years or so, the luster it's just gotten so Hollywoodized, and it's such a shame, because like these animals are already so incredible as it is. You don't have to make them fantastical. Like you just spend time with them and watch them, watch them eat or watch them do natural things. They don't need to be attacking you. You can just watch them do it with, in their natural habitat. And that's amazing enough. So it's like, it's a shame. Like I much prefer stuff like Jaws, if I'm honest, Jaws and stuff like that, telling people about sharks, than Shark Week. Because I feel like when people watch Shark Week, they think they're watching an education, or they're getting an education on sharks, and they're really just being entertained. It's, they're not, I can't say that about all of it. I'm painting with a broad brush, but you know what I mean? Where like, they have the specials with, Mike Tyson fighting a shark or something like that. And you're like, what, why?
It's interesting you say that, because I this year, when myself and Dean is the chief writer of the Daily Jaws, he helps with all the blogging and the news features. What's sort of happened when we've looked back, we've always trying to do like a Shark Week guide, just to tell people what's happening when, basically, because Shark Week we like it. It's a good thing to have happen. It's better that it happens than it doesn't. But it's definitely, as we've done it sort of every year, and we look back at the original programming, it's definitely moved from education to entertainment. And it's sort of playing the same game that the sensationalist headlines are, and it doesn't need to, because as you say, these creatures are amazing as they are, and there's been so many advances in the way that we can observe and record, and I don't want to use the word interact, but we can sort of understand more about their world and the way that they behave, and ultimately how they fit into this broader ecosystem. Because one of my heroes is Sylvia Earle, and she's amazing, and her whole Mission Blue, and no blue, no green. It's just so no water, no land, no ocean, no earth, basically. For those that aren't familiar, it's you don't need to have Mike Tyson fighting a shark, or Shaq Week, or whatever it was the year before. And I mean, they've got quite a good sense of humor. I like the seal, the seal advert. It's not a good week to be a seal, or whatever it is.
I posted that. I love that.
That's quite witty. That's quite funny. But you don't need to go down that route. Get our attention with the funny, sensational headlines or whatever it is, but educate people. Get some realistic stuff happening during that week, and people will come back. Because when we've posted about Shark Week, particularly this year, was it this year? No, last year I think it was. We got a bit of bite back from followers. Just like, do you know what Shark Week's about now? It's like, it is entertainment more than education. Well, I guess they're just trying to keep their audience, and they're following the examples set by all these other channels and stuff, and how they're doing it, and they're doing it through comical, humorous, sensational, fantastical situations and stuff. And it's like,
I know.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's not go down that route.
I think there's going to be a reckoning with that kind of stuff. I think I think they can only they've got along. I mean, I think, like you just said, there's especially last year and the year before, there's more and more people kind of bowing out, just that are shark crazy just for the fact that, you don't want to be attached to that kind of stuff so much. We preach so much about the respect angle and all the rest. Like if we're just constantly trashing the sharks or, making we're here to do the absolute opposite. I feel like it portrays a lot of the time with Shark Week. So it's like you said, I love it because it's about sharks, but then you watch it and you're like, can you just let's do a real documentary about the sharks of Guadalupe? Like, why does it have to be Michael Phelps swimming? Okay, actually get Michael Phelps in the water, then let him swim against a shark. I'll watch that.
Yeah.
Do that. But no, it's just this trying to, and then they hype it up for some, anyway. It's just that media thing again. But
it's just about trying to capture the attention, get as many bums on seats and eyeballs on the screen as possible. And I get that. I get it. And it's better that Shark Week exists than not. But let's try and get back to what Shark Week used to be about, which was really just pure education and admiration, because that's where true inspiration comes from. It's coming back to your point right at the beginning of the call around passion and inspiration, and you're certainly one of the most passionate people I've spoken to, and I've loved every minute of it because I've learned so much. But also, even though this is a Zoom call, you can feel that passion, and even if your passion isn't necessarily sharks, it's follow whatever that happens to be. Because particularly now during lockdown, when you've got all this extra time, which is why we're investing a lot more time in the daily jaws, and you're able to invest more time in your projects and stuff like that, which brings me beautifully to your movie. So tell us about the new movie film that you have released and how that happened and where people can find it.
Sure. It's on all my kind of social channels. I've been trying to I have, every time I shoot with a Nikon underneath the water in a water housing by Aquatech, and it provides you kind of a shoe on the top to run a whatever you want kind of on top. So I have a GoPro. I actually now have 3D printed this kind of little holder to hold it next to the lens right up front, so it's not up top and banging into the cage all the time. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's just I've started doing a lot more film stuff in the last couple of years professionally, and so as I take photos, I usually have a GoPro running at the same time. So I always kind of I have the stills, but then I have video just in case I wanted to do, or just in case something happens or I want to capture, because it's hard to, for me personally, I like focusing on one or the other. You can't switch them back and forth in the housing, but I'd rather just focus primarily on stills, and then I have the GoPros kind of running for backup stuff. And a lot of people do that, but 9 times out of 10, it just gets, maybe I'll look at it once and it just gets stored away and I don't do anything with it. So during the lockdown, I've been trying to utilize that footage more, just for the fact that I have it, and I think people would like to see it. So I made kind of like a hypercut. So for me, visuals are about, it's 50-50 with audio too, with the right track. And I love music. I listen to it constantly. And, but I now have I call it a sickness. Like if I hear a song, like if it's a good song, that's awesome. But if it's a song that I immediately can see visuals going to, like it's an addiction, I'm like, oh my God, what song is this? I need to know the name of this immediately, because I got to make something that goes along towards this, the kind of thing. And I had heard this song, it's by Alan Raymond, it's called, and it's an amazing song. And so I heard that song, I'm like, man, I can see sharks to this song. Without a doubt, I can see sharks to this song. So I just kind of made a hypercut from the last 2 years, just little highlights that I think that a couple I think I had maybe released on Instagram video here and there, but it's just it's kind of my so we had four trips this year get canned at the last minute. We kept thinking maybe we'll get to go, maybe we get, as COVID progressed and it's our hopes got dashed. Like I said, I'm a very positive person, and but I use these trips when I go out there as a very much a grounding. I'm a full-time shark photographer, but at the same time I have 3 other jobs. So I use my time with those animals as a very much of a grounding, kind of recentering, if you want to call it, whether it's creatively or, I'm just on a boat for 3 days making art. That's how I picture it all the time. It's my kind of escape. There's no access to my phone. I don't have to worry about posting anything. I don't have any of that kind of constraints on top of me. I just get to go out there and do what I feel like I'm put here to do. And I didn't get to do it this year. And it really messed with me, if I'm honest. Like I had, and I was very vocal about it with my wife and, other people around me. And they knew that it was just something that I would, even like Nikki and other people who go all the time, like, they were the same way. But this was kind of, these helped me going through the videos and doing this kind of stuff just to kind of combat they call them Guadalupe blues when you're not there. So yeah, this film has kind of come out of that. It's really just it's a music video almost to this song, but it shows kind of it's got a couple of really good clips of just how these animals are, and the whole thing I'm filming within feet of these animals. People sometimes ask, like, how close do you get? And you're like, I mean, they've banged into the end of my camera before. They've, they get very close. So it's, yeah, that's really where it came from. And I'm pretty proud of it, though. I think it shows, it's got some, nice big mouth stuff, but it's also just got them cruising off in the distance. There's a couple shots. That's one of the most amazing parts about Guadalupe is, yes, the quality of the clarity of the water is amazing, but occasionally whether it's a predation or a cloud of sediment from a storm that's 20 miles away or whatever it is, sometimes will come floating through. So you'll go from really, really clear to, micro bubbles or haze or whatever. And to a lot of photographers, that's a problem. To me, I love it. Because it creates such a mood, and like it's, all your shots don't look the same kind of thing. So yes, it's challenging. You just got to know your gear. But once you're in there, you can kind of, I kind of lucked out because I came from shooting National Hockey League, NHL hockey for a while, and NASCAR and stuff like that, where it's, shooting action sports like that. I don't shoot underwater photography like other photographers would. And that's not a knock against them. I'm just like, I was trained to capture people and like events and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I shoot sharks the same way, where I use more sports lenses and I get compression through the lens. So I'm shooting maybe a telephoto lens where you usually wouldn't, people underwater are usually shooting macro and stuff that's like a foot away from you kind of thing with strobes and all the rest. There's no room in the cage for that. People try and bring them, but you're the jerk in there with strobes banging into everyone as everyone else is trying to look at sharks. So, it's a completely different kind of underwater photography, which is kind of cool because it allowed me, who's albeit like a novice to underwater photography in the beginning, just kind of make my own rules. And I'd rather it that way because it kind of levels the playing field. And then it's all really about how you can best, show the animals off. And so that's also helped me, I think, with filming and all that stuff, being able to do it kind of a skewed perspective of it. It helps set it apart, I think. So.
I was going to say, your photos seem, just from a style point of view and what you just said about sort of shooting NHL and NASCAR and stuff, it makes sense because your pictures are, even though the shark pictures, they seem quite distinct. There is a style to them, and I think, if memory serves, there are a couple of pictures where the water's darker, there's some bubbles, and then there's a shark in the distance, and you look at that and you just think, wow, that's really, really cool. And I think it is important that we do see sharks as naturally as possible, and also as almost as personalities as people, because that's again how you break past that perception of just painting the same brush with every shark. Every shark with the same brush. So keep up the great work, man. I mean, it's inspiring to me. I've absolutely loved every minute of speaking to you today. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out from your wife, your kids, your 3 jobs, everything you've got going on. We'll get this up on YouTube ASAP. I'm sure the followers and the fans are going to absolutely love it. It is normally traditional for me to leave the last word with the guest. So anything you'd like to say as a sort of a passing word at all?
I would say take the time, whether in anything, take the time to do your homework, In anything that you find interesting, or even are slightly scared about, but still find interesting. I think, especially in these lockdowns, or in these times of COVID, like really just try and make the most out of your time, and come shark diving with us.
So educate yourself, face your fears, go shark diving. That's basically the to-do list, yeah?
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, thanks so much, dude. It's been great. Guys, I've been Ross from the Daily Jaws. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll put some links to Euan's work in the description and also at the blog. But for more information, check out thedailyjaws.com. So, Euan, you mentioned tattoos, and obviously you are a man of ink. Now, apparently you've got a new tattoo you want to show us.
I do. So I've got like one arm's kind of England and all the rest family arm, and then this arm's my shark arm. So it's probably best if I just take my sweatshirt off. Hold on.
Okay, just going to rate this PG-13 now.
Oh, sorry. Make sure it stays on.
I have to put a warning. Maybe too intense for younger children.
So I don't know if you can see, but there's it's still healing too. So I don't know if it.
When did you get that done?
It's a couple weeks ago. So there's Jaws, and then there's an icon inside it, and then it says Guadalupe Island around my wrist, and then there's red.
Is that red? Yeah. Oh, wow.
And, I don't know if you can see, but there's a chain. So that's actually a photo Rodney Fox took, this shark, but then there's me photographing it. I don't know if you can see my stupid head right there photographing it, and then the cage in there, and then there's a chain coming up, and then let me see if I can show you my shoulder. And then, so there's the Solm RV.
Oh, this is the boat you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
wow. That's impressive. And what are the roses for? I just spotted the roses.
The roses, so they're family roses. I've got another rose on my hand here. I just they mean a lot to our family, so I have a couple on my body.
Well, I've got a tattoo. I'm not going to show it, but it's pathetic. Basically, I was supposed to get something bigger, but the needle started to hurt. So
oh no!
I know. It got to a point in my arm, like the joint of the elbow, where the skin's really sensitive. And I was like, no, that's enough. That's enough. I couldn't take it.
The joints are they are the worst, but I stupidly like the way it feels, but I don't like it on the joints. The joints don't feel good.
Okay, so that wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be, ladies and gentlemen. We don't need to, no special warnings or anything like that. Okay. Thanks so much for watching. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing the video, subscribing to the channel and clicking those all important notifications. For more great Jaws content, visit thedailyjaws.com.